Hello, everybody. I am currently in the basement slash my hobby area. I got the old 3D printer running here. I got my bench, my makeshift paint booth. And that's not just plastic. There's a fan that goes down to a 5-gallon bucket that's a custom filter. My point is there's going to be some noises, so hopefully they're not too distracting. I don't think they will be. I think the loudest one is going to be the furnace, which of course just popped on. Before I start reading, I had a thought. Well, I believe the Spirit prompted me. If you look at my channel, and anybody who knows me knows, my family and I are, it's so funny to think this, especially from the people we used to be, especially me, considered hardcore Christians, because we follow or try to follow the Torah. Lord, please forgive us. But in my mind, there's no, I don't want to say there's no difference. Obviously, there's a difference in the way I conduct myself and live my life, but not that big of a difference. I just follow rules that I've always followed. Like, basically, don't be a douche. Be responsible for your actions. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not on a high horse, and I'm not trying to get too specific. The point is I laugh when people give me that, like, you're a hardcore Christian, man. Like, almost like someone's got to be watched. It's hilarious, especially if you knew, like, but the point is if you know me and you obviously look at the channel, what's been pressed upon me by the Spirit, the Lord, is correcting the teachings of modern churchianity. And I guess I should delete the word modern, because pretty much since the Council of Nicaea, that's kind of when all this got really going. So it's interesting to me when you look at all the different denominations, they really, I don't think they fundamentally grasp that they are no different. They pick and choose what they want to believe or how they want to interpret things out of the Bible, but they all came from the Roman Catholic Church. Pretty much. No, they all did. Then Martin Luther did his little thing where everybody thinks one thing, but in reality he was challenging something pretty specific, and it was, in layman's terms, people buying their way into heaven. At least they thought they were. You could spend money and buy these sort of like sin forgiveness credits from the church. His main beef with the church wasn't what it should have been, which was the church teaching dogma and not what Jesus did. He was more concerned with, don't get me wrong, I agree with some of the stuff he said, and I'm grateful for what he did as far as challenging the church, which opened the door for that. But do some deeper reading into that if you have some time. It's interesting. But the church, in the way it was supposed to be, was only the first roughly 300 years of its existence, where they still kept the Torah, kept the feasts, kept Shabbat, what we're still supposed to be doing now. Then they got, conglomerated into the Roman Catholic Church along with all the pagans. Voila. Anyway, if you'll look back on my videos, there's one that's, I think it's 2 hours and 11 minutes or something like that. And it's every instance I could find. See all these? 99% of them are related to the Torah, the law. And I listed every one of these, and I added context if it needed to be. But it's hard to see here, but if you'll look, there is probably twice as many references to the Torah and following the Torah in the New Testament than there is in the Old Testament. See, the Old Testament is the listing of the Torah, and then stories of what happens when the people did follow the Torah and didn't follow the Torah, and the consequences of each decision. The New Testament is Yeshua, Jesus, coming back to bring people two things: to pay for our sins, and to bring people back to the Father and the way through the law, the Torah. Because remember, he said I came to complete the Torah, not get rid of it. So that's a he specifically says it's not going anywhere. He came to complete it, embody it, to show us how to do it, because the Pharisees were making their own laws, which God says not to do, that, well, not adding to his word or deleting from it. The Pharisees were tripping people up, adding man's law and pretending it was God's law. Jesus came back to pay for his sins and to warn people and warn the Pharisees, you better stop doing that and don't listen to these clowns, because they're a stumbling block for you to get into heaven. And a great example of that is, as opposed to what most churchgoers will say, that he got rid of the law, it was nailed to the cross, brother. No, it wasn't. He made it harder. Remember, the Torah said, thou shalt not murder. He goes, no. It's not just enough not to not murder. Like, you want to murder your neighbor Bill because he's a douchebag. Just because you woke up today and at the end of the day you didn't murder him, no. You've got to not want to murder him. Just because you didn't bang your neighbor's wife, no. You've got to not want to. It's in your heart. It's even harder. He made the Torah more strict. So, how the church, modern church, or the church reconciles that with their stance of he got rid of the law that's an impossibility. Those two are diametrically opposed. But what's funny is again, my point is reading through the New Testament, reading what Jesus said, reading all the other books in the New Testament. And remember, the New Testament is much smaller than the Old Testament. There's more Old Testament in the New Testament than there is in the Old Testament. And again, anybody who doesn't believe me, go read through your own Bible and find all the references to the law, or you can just watch my video. I know most of my videos revolve around this, and it might get tiresome, but it's been pressed upon me very much to bring this to people. Because, it doesn't help me. I already do it. Think about it this way. I'm not going to get punished for keeping God's laws as long as I'm, doing everything else he says to do. It's not affecting me. If you guys do it or not, I wish you would. I'm doing it for people who, need to hear this and think they're doing what they genuinely want to please the Lord. I'm sorry. Oh, excuse me. It's interesting that Arizona iced tea, at least where I live, is still the same exact price that it was 8-10 years ago. Everything else, most other things' prices have skyrocketed. Arizona iced tea is still the same price. It's funny. Anyway, where my train of thought has been derailed by iced tea. Again, okay, I know it gets tiresome, but I care. I want you guys to understand that the church is, by Jesus' own mouth, multiple times, very wrong and misleading you guys in saying that you don't have to follow the Torah. Now, I'm not getting into the nitty-gritty, the specifics. You got to remember, there's 613 laws. Approximately a third of them are gone because they relate to us. We need a temple, and there's no temple, so we can't do those. And then another pretty sizable portion of them is related to women's cleanliness, at least a decent proportion. So guys don't have to, it's not even, 613 laws, that's a ton, how am I supposed to follow all those? Well, you're just supposed to try, obviously. You're not going to be perfect, which is why we have an intercessor. We have Jesus to speak on our behalf. As long as we're doing it in good faith, we're trying. And as far as the 613 being a lot, my response to that is, what? You do realize that if you live in America, you are under millions of laws. federal laws, and it's probably more of a state, county, town. Millions. You are breaking laws that you don't even know. And I'm not talking small ones. You're breaking. The average person, they say, commits 3 felonies a day. Felonies. So, again, I'm not trying to drone on or make this exceedingly longer than it has to be. I just really wish, let's put it this way, if your response to this is anger or irritation because you truly believe that we don't have to follow law, because you've been an avid churchgoer, and that's what you've been taught, you owe it to yourself, and not just with this, but with everything. When you hear conflicting data, no matter how silly it seems, for the most part, on the surface, you owe it to yourself to really research it, because that fosters critical thinking, and you might be surprised the amount of things that we get taught here in America from a very young age that are, definitely true. But once you do more research, you look deeper into things, you might not say, well, that those aren't true, but you definitely will have serious questions about things that you wouldn't even think, things that you probably view every day. Like, for an instance, the buildings that almost, at least in the Northeast, I believe a lot of them got destroyed in other places, but they're all over. I know they are. But the buildings we call old world buildings, the buildings that look like they came out of, medieval times. And if you look up the histories, they all were, built in 1487 or 1802 in like 1 year, made from an architect who had no experience whatsoever, by people who had no power tools, no automated manufacturing, which means they couldn't call up, and be like, oh, we need 10,000 bricks by, next month. They didn't have, things that people, like water access for just even the animals to do they had hammers, chisels, Again, I'm not saying I know exactly what's going on there, but what we are taught, I believe we are being lied to about a lot of things. Oh man, as usual, my videos go all over. I try not to do that. So anyway, again, the Old Testament is the New Testament is more Old Testament than the Old Testament, in my opinion. Have a great day. Peace out.